You rebelled against them. You shut your gates upon them. You bid them battle. You fought them, and fought for Diabolus against them. So they sent to my father for more power, and I with my men are come to subdue you. But as you treated the servants, so you treated their lord. You stood up in hostile manner against me. You shut up your gates against me. You turned the deaf ear to me, and resisted as long as you could. But now I have made a conquest of you. Did you cry me mercy so long as you had hopes that you might prevail against me? But now I have taken the town, you cry. But why did you not cry before, when the white flag of my mercy, the red flag of justice, and the black flag that threatened execution were set up to cite you to it? Now I have conquered your Diabolus, you come to me for favour. But why did you not help me against the mighty? Yet I will consider your petition, and will answer it so as will be for my glory. Go, bid Captain Boanerges and Captain Conviction bring the prisoners out to me into the camp to-morrow. And say you to Captain Judgment and Captain Execution, stay you in the castle, and take good heed to yourselves that you keep all quiet in man's soul until you shall hear further from me. And with that he turned himself from them, and went into his royal pavilion again. So the petitioners, having received this answer from the prince, returned as at the first, to go to their companions again. But they had not gone far, but thoughts began to work in their minds that no mercy as yet was intended by the prince to man's soul. So they went to the place where the prisoners lay bound. But these workings of mind about what would become of man's soul had such strong power over them, that by that they were come unto them that sent them. They were scarce able to deliver their message. But they came at length to the gates of the town. Now the townsmen with earnestness were waiting for their return, where many met them, to know what answer was made to the petition. Then they cried out to those that were sent, What news from the prince? And what hath Emmanuel said? But they said that they must, as afore, go up to the prison, and there deliver their message. So away they went to the prison, with a multitude at their heels. Now when they were come to the gates of the prison, they told the first part of Emmanuel's speech to the prisoners, to wit, how he reflected upon their disloyalty to his father and himself, and how they had chosen and closed with Diabolus, had fought for him, hearkened to him, and been ruled by him, but had despised him and his men. This made the prisoners look pale, but the messengers proceeded and said, He, the prince, said, moreover, that yet he would consider your petition, and give such answer thereto as would stand with his glory. And as these words were spoken, Mr. Wet Eyes gave a great sigh. At this they were all of them struck into their dumps, and could not tell what to say. Fear also possessed them in a marvellous manner, and death seemed to sit upon some of their eyebrows. Now there was in the company a notable, sharp-witted fellow, a mean man of estate, and his name was Old Inquisitive. This man asked the petitioners if they had told out every whit of what Emmanuel said, and they answered, Verily no. Then said Inquisitive, I thought so indeed. Pray, what was it more that he said unto you? Then they paused a while, but at last they brought out all, saying, The prince bade us bid Captain Boanerges and Captain Conviction bring the prisoners down to him to-morrow, and that Captain Judgment and Captain Execution should take charge of the castle and town till they should hear further from him. They said also that when the prince had commanded them thus to do, he immediately turned his back upon them, and went into his royal pavilion. But oh, how this return, and specially this last clause of it, that the prisoners must go out to the prince into the camp, break all their loins in pieces. Wherefore with one voice they set up a cry that reached up to the heavens. This done, each of the three prepared himself to die. And the recorder said unto them, This was the thing that I feared. For they concluded that to-morrow, by that the sun went down, they should be tumbled out of the world. The whole town also counted of no other, but that in their time and order they must all drink of the same cup. Wherefore the town of Mansoul spent that night in mourning and sackcloth and ashes. The prisoners also, when the time was come for them to go down before the prince, dressed themselves in mourning attire, with ropes upon their heads. The whole town of Mansoul also showed themselves upon the wall, all clad in mourning weeds, if, perhaps, the prince with the sight thereof might be moved with compassion. But oh, how the busybodies that were in the town of Mansoul did now concern themselves! They did run here and there through the streets of the town by companies, crying out as they ran in tumultuous wise, one after one manner, and another the quite contrary, to the almost utter distraction of Mansoul. Well, the time is come that the prisoners must go down to the camp and appear before the prince, and thus was the manner of their going down. Captain Boanerges went with a guard before them, and Captain Conviction came behind, and the prisoners went down, bound in chains in the midst. So I say the prisoners went in the midst, and the guard went with flying colours behind and before, but the prisoners went with drooping spirits. Or more particularly thus, the prisoners went down all in mourning. They put ropes upon themselves, they went on smiting themselves on the breasts, but durst not lift up their eyes to heaven. Thus they went out at the gate of Mansoul, till they came into the midst of the prince's army, the sight and glory of which did greatly heighten their affliction. Nor could they now longer forbear, but cry out aloud, O unhappy men! O wretched men of Mansoul! Their chains, still mixing their dolorous notes with the cries of the prisoners, made the noise more lamentable. So when they were come to the door of the prince's pavilion, they cast themselves prostrate upon the place. Then one went in and told his lord that the prisoners were come down. The prince then ascended a throne of state, and sent for the prisoners in, who, when they came, did tremble before him. Also they covered their faces with shame. Now as they drew near to the place where he sat, they threw themselves down before him. Then said the prince to the captain Boanerges, Bid the prisoners stand upon their feet. Then they stood trembling before him, and he said, Are you the men that heretofore were the servants of Shaddai? And they said, Yes, Lord, yes. Then said the prince again, Are you the men that did suffer yourselves to be corrupted and defiled by that abominable one, Diabolus? And they said, We did more than suffer it, Lord, for we chose it of our own mind. The prince asked further, saying, Could you have been content that your slavery should have continued under his tyranny as long as you had lived? Then said the prisoners, Yes, Lord, yes, for his ways were pleasing to our flesh, and we were grown aliens to a better state. And did you, said he, when I came up against this town of Mansoul, heartily wish that I might not have the victory over you? Yes, Lord, yes, they said. Then said the prince, And what punishment is it, think you, that you deserve at my hand for these and other your high and mighty sins? And they said, Both death and the deep, Lord, for we have deserved no less. He asked again if they had aught to say for themselves, why the sentence, that they confessed that they had deserved, should not be passed upon them. And they said, We can say nothing, Lord. Thou art just, for we have sinned. Then said the prince, And for what are those ropes on your heads? The prisoners answered, These ropes are to bind us withal to the place of execution, if mercy be not pleasing in thy sight. So he further asked if all the men in the town of Mansoul were in this confession as they. And they answered, All the natives, Lord, but for the Diabolonians that came into our town when the tyrant got possession of us, we can say nothing for them. Then the prince commanded that a herald should be called, and that he should, in the midst and throughout the camp of Emmanuel, proclaim, and that with sound of trumpet, that the prince, the son of Shaddai, had, in his father's name, and for his father's glory, gotten a perfect conquest and victory over Mansoul, and that the prisoners should follow him and say Amen. So this was done as he had